Let me just step right in. I got things to advance. I'm an innovator, baby, change the world. Fortune 500 before you kiss the girl.
So the Apple Computer Company first popped into existence in 1976, and sure enough, the company was so successful in so short a time that Fortune 500, a listing that tracks US companies by gross revenue, listed Apple in 411th place in 1983. Bill Gates would have been around 27 at the time, and Jobs is saying he hadn't kissed a girl yet. I mean, obviously I don't know, but it is worth noting that Gates was dating future venture capitalist Ann Winblad around that time. So,
I'm a pink, you're a nerd, I'm slick, you're cheesy.
That in the background, that is actually a kind of fractal effect. Fractals are really interesting products of advanced mathematics that do some very funky things in computing. I'd recommend looking them up. Now, it's relevant here because writing and creating fractals are some of the earliest things new programmers learn. Though this isn't a true fractal, it's kind of mimicking the look.
Beating you is Apple too easy.
The Apple II is one of the company's greatest early achievements. Jobs and Apple co-founder Steve Wozniak first introduced this thing at the 1977 West Coast Computer Fair. And this was a big deal because it was the first Apple thing aimed at everyday users, that is, you and me. And this new focus on their products became a large part of their business going forward. And yeah, the thing sold like crazy. I mean, it was innovative. It had color graphics, used all this technological magicking to up performance and yet keep price low. In fact, Harry McCracken of Time magazine writes that even if Apple had gone under right after releasing the Apple II, the company would still have gone down as one of the best known personal computing companies of all time. So I'm not sure I'd call the Apple II easy. It definitely required a lot of work, but it makes sense that Steve would be bragging about it.
I make the product that the artist chooses and the GUI that Melinda uses.
GUI refers to graphical user interface. Remember, early computers didn't have a fun, bright, colorful monitor that made it easy to interact with. That's why only tech-savvy people knew how to work them. Apple was one of the first to introduce a GUI to make computers more user-friendly, and as we know, that trend caught on. Now, Melinda Gates is of course Bill Gates' wife. Whether or not she uses Macintosh GUI, well, Melinda has gone on record saying she doesn't let any Apple products into her home, so I'm gonna say no on that one.
I need to bring up some basic shit.
BASIC, which stands for Beginner's All-Purpose Symbolic Instruction Code, is a series of programming languages designed so that non-experts could code. BASIC was incredibly popular in the past, though it fell out of use around the 80s in favor of more advanced systems. But the language does sort of live on in spirit via Microsoft's Visual Basic.
Why'd you name your company after your dick?
Microsoft is actually short for microcomputing software, emphasizing the emerging tech of the time. But other early names considered for this company included Outcorporated Incorporated, Unlimited Limited, and Allen and Gates after the company's founders. Of course, most of these options were just jokes by Paul and Bill.
Hello, Jobs, you arrogant prick with your second-hand jeans and your turtleneck.
So Steve Jobs' go-to outfit was famously a black turtleneck and a pair of jeans. And, well, he looked great. He made some of the biggest announcements in tech history wearing that, and it worked fine. Bill here is claiming that the outfit is second-rate, but that's not actually accurate. Jobs' turtlenecks were designer-made by the famous artist Issey Miyake, and in fact, Jobs initially wanted Miyake to make similarly designed uniforms for all his employees. The turtleneck has now become famous in the tech world, with many trying to imitate the look, infamously including Elizabeth Holmes. And if you're dying to have Jobs' signature look, well, you can pick up that turtleneck for $270. So not exactly secondhand.
I did a hole in the middle of your bony head with your own little spinning big ball of death.
If you use a Mac, you'll be familiar with the spinning weight cursor, also known as the spinning beach ball or the spinning wheel of death. The design actually debuted on the software HyperCard and the OS Next Step, but in 2002, Mac OS inherited it as well. Normally it pops up just to signify the computer is processing something, but the problem comes in when the ball keeps spinning and crashes the whole damn computer. Of course, it's not the ball's fault, it's whatever your computer is doing, but it's hard not to hate the thing.
Hippie, you got given up at birth.
Yeah, the story of baby Steve Jobs is actually kind of tragic. Jobs' birth parents, Abdul Fattah Jandali and Joanne Schibel, met as undergrads at American University in Beirut. Joanne got pregnant, but her parents' refusal to accept the relationship led her to put the baby up for adoption. However, the family that then adopted baby Steve quickly changed their minds and gave him back. Eventually, Paul and Clara Jobs stepped in to take the baby, but as this couple wasn't even college educated, Joanne fought back hard. Obviously, this new couple eventually won the battle, but it was a difficult journey, with Clara Jobs even admitting that she refused to love baby Steve at first to save her the emotional pain of having to give him up. So yeah, baby Steve was given away. Twice. There's actually a brilliant scene in Aaron Sorkin's Steve Jobs that reflects on this story.
I was given back. You said, it's not like someone looked at me and gave me back, but that is what happened. A lawyer, a couple adopted me first and gave me back after a month. They changed their mind. What the hell can a 1-month-old do that's so bad his parents give him back.
In his youth, Steve Jobs experimented with LSD, took a soul-searching journey to India, and also dabbled in New Age spirituality, eventually becoming a Buddhist. So, yeah, he's a hippie.
I give away your net worth to AIDS research.
Bill Gates is a famously giving philanthropist, with his and his wife's charity organization, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, donating towards global healthcare, education, and ending poverty. At the time of his death in 2011, Jobs was worth about $10.2 billion. Bill and Melinda are the most generous philanthropists in the United States and have committed billions to ending the AIDS epidemic, but it'd still be surprising if their donations truly matched Jobs' entire net worth.
Combine all your little toys and I still crush that. iPhone, iPad, iPhone, I smack.
This is a play on how a lot of Apple stuff is branded with the letter I, and it's been that way since 1988's iMac. Why? Well, the obvious connection is for internet, with a lot of Apple's famous devices being internet-enabled. But Jobs actually explained that the I stood for many company ideals, including individualism, instruction, information, and inspiration. The iPhone is, of course, probably the most famous Apple product to date. While Apple did not invent the smartphone, when they unveiled the iPhone in 2007, they largely defined what it became. Also, fun fact, gum sales have declined 15% since 2007. Why? Because ever since then, no one's staring at candy in the checkout aisles anymore. They're on their phones. The iPad, first arriving in 2010, also made a huge splash. While its sales peaked in 2013, it was still the most popular tablet computer in the second quarter of 2018.
A man uses the machines you build to sit down and pay his taxes.
Pointing out that the all-white background is a reference to the famous series of Mac versus PC commercials where Apple branded Mac products as cool and simple with a hot guy and Microsoft as geeky and complicated with a nerdy guy. Of note though, Microsoft eventually clapped back with a series of ads where people proudly stated,
I'm a PC.
I'm a PC.
I'm a PC.
Yeah, I'm a PC too.
I'm a PC.
I'm a PC.
I'm a PC.
And I have a beard.
Again, while Microsoft is often proud of its complexity and high customization, Apple has always focused on being as simple as possible, with one of their earliest marketing materials stating outright, simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. Apple's products are meant to be friendly, easy to pick up, learn, and use right away. These lines are riffing on that implication.
A man uses the machines I build to listen to the Beatles while he relaxes.
The other thing here, Steve Jobs was a huge Beatles fan, but fun fact, the Beatles record label was actually also called Apple Core Limited. This led to a long series of legal disputes over the name for years. Who won? Well, as of 2010, the Beatles' entire catalog is on iTunes. So,
Well, Steve, you steal all the credit for work that other people do. Did your fat beard Wozniak write these raps for you too?
Steve Jobs famously was not really a tech guy. He didn't write code or do any engineering. All of that really fell on co-founder Steve Wozniak. And people have criticized Jobs for taking the glory for other people's work and even putting his engineers down. There might even be evidence that Steve cheated Woz out of money in their early partnerships since he took more of the credit. So what did Steve do? He was a damn brilliant marketing man. He obsessed over the packaging, the look, the feel, everything that would make the products the peak of user-friendly innovation. And hey, it worked. Going back to the Steve Jobs movie, there's a famous scene there on this too.
What? Ooh, everybody knows Windows bit off Apple.
This is of course a reference to Apple's bitten Apple logo, but it's also saying Windows stole ideas and tech from Apple. And there is a history of lawsuits that might back that. Apple in fact famously sued Microsoft for supposedly copying the Lisa in Macintosh's GUIs. Bill Gates, for his part, argued that Jobs didn't have sole ownership of this new technology and that regardless, Steve himself took the idea from Xerox PARC Labs. But what does this bitten Apple logo actually mean? The original designer, Rob Yanoff, said he included the bite to make it clear that it's an apple and not a cherry. Nevertheless, many have interpreted it as a reference to the story of Adam and Eve, with the bite being a glimpse of forbidden knowledge. I also want to point out the background here. The Rap World Expo is a riff on the old Macworld Expo, where Jobs would make a lot of his groundbreaking announcements, but Gates appearing on screen is actually a direct reference to the 1997 Expo, in which Jobs brought Gates on screen to explain a partnership between the companies. And, well, not everyone was happy about that.
We look forward to the feedback from all of you as we move forward doing more Macintosh software.
I triple the profits on a PC. All the people with the power to create use an Apple. And people with jobs use PC. You know, I bet they made this beat on an Apple. Nope, Fruity Loops, PC.
It's true that many producers do make music on Apple devices with software like GarageBand. However, Bill correctly points out that the ERB team makes their beats on Fruity Loops, now called FL Studio, on a PC.
You will never, ever catch a virus on an Apple. Well, you can still afford a doctor if you bought a PC.
So until about 2008, Apple would preach that their tech was almost impervious to viruses and malware, while Windows devices were famous for them. And, you know, it was true that Microsoft products had a higher rate of being infected, but that's also largely because in the early days, those making the viruses focused on infecting Windows because more people had it. Now, as Mac products get more prevalent, so too are viruses on Macs. Windows are now known to be very secure, and although Mac products are about equal, there were still 6 major attacks on the Mac in 2019 alone. Bill Gates' last line here is a riff on Apple's pricing. And yeah, historically, Apple's prices have been prohibitively expensive, but they do that on purpose. Apple's products are meant to be luxury items. In fact, studies have shown that Apple's prices are rising faster than the prices of prescription drugs or even university tuition. They tout being user-friendly enough for anyone, but in reality, it's for anyone who can afford it. This is likely why, even though Apple became a trillion-dollar company in 2018, their products are still not as popular in the developing world, where Android is by far winning the game.
Let's talk about doctors. I've seen a few cause I got a PC, but it wasn't from you. I built a legacy, son. You can never stop it. Now excuse me while I turn heaven a profit.
Wow. So, yes, Steve Jobs did get a PC later in life, and by PC he means pancreatic cancer. Jobs fought hard to survive, trying alternative medicines at first and then agreeing to traditional cancer treatments. But even after a liver transplant, his rare pancreatic neuroendocrine tumor was inoperable, and this is what ultimately killed Steve Jobs. So he takes a moment here to talk about his legacy, and well, regardless of whose side you're on here, his impact is undeniable. Jobs spearheaded the iPod, the iPhone, things that changed the nature of everyday life forever. Jobs also, after a brief departure from the company, came back and swung Apple from the brink of bankruptcy to one of the most profitable tech companies in the world. He's gone, but he left a mark. Jobs' last words reference heaven here, but since most sources say he was a Buddhist, it's unlikely he believed in the traditional Christian idea of it. Also of note here is he signs off with the famous Steve Jobs pose. Back in the day, photographer Albert Watson asked Steve to pose as if he was thinking about his next project or how to counter people who disagreed with him, and this is what we got.
Fine, wanna be like that? Die then! The whole world loves you, but you are my friend!
So, the question of them being friends, this is a hard one. In the early days, Steve and Bill did do a lot of work together. Microsoft made early software for the Apple II, and Bill would regularly visit Apple's offices to say hello. But even early on, these interactions were a bit tense, with Gates later explaining the sense of condescension Steve would give off when proposing partnerships, essentially telling Gates, "I don't need you, but I'll let you get involved." But as the companies grew, the two did battle, with Apple suing Microsoft for copying their GUI, and Bill even advising one Apple CEO to not allow Steve back into the company. But the two were, as far as we can tell, on good terms near the end of Steve's life. They both admitted they owe a lot to each other and found it in them to respect the other's work. Friends may be a stretch, but I don't think they hated each other.
I'm alone now with nothing but power and time, and no one on earth who can challenge my mind. I'm a boss, I own DOS, your future is my design. I'm a god, own Xbox, now there's no one to stop me, the world is mine.
So DOS, yeah. In 1980, Microsoft struck a deal with Tim Patterson of Seattle Computer Products to buy their OS, 86DOS, and rework it into PC-DOS, an operating system designed for IBM in a partnership between the companies. And this was actually a huge deal because IBM, then a superpower, choosing to put Microsoft tech on their platform gave the growing company a stamp of approval that would let it shoot into stardom. And eventually, PC-DOS was reworked into MS-DOS and sold to the public. And the Xbox, debuting in 2001, was Microsoft's step into the console world. Despite being a newcomer, with the Xbox, Microsoft quickly became one of the top 3 gaming companies in the industry, the others being Sony and Nintendo. Fun story, Gates originally wanted the Xbox to run on Windows OS and was furious when co-creator Ed Fries told him that wasn't happening. However, once Bill saw how fast Sony was taking over the market, he gave Fries his blessing. However, more recent Xbox consoles have come with much heavier integration with Windows PCs.
I'm sorry, Bill. I'm afraid I can't let you do that. Take a look at your history. Everything you built leads up to me.
And now enter HAL 9000, the famous villain from Stanley Kubrick's 2001 A Space Odyssey based on Arthur C. Clarke's novel of the same name. HAL renders heuristically programmed algorithmic computer and is a sentient machine in charge of the movie's Discovery 1 spacecraft. HAL's line here is a play on his famous line from the movie.
Open the pod bay doors, Hal.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
HAL's inclusion is likely a reference to HAL's various Apple cameos. At the turn of the millennium, when the country and the world was in peak Y2K hysteria, Apple came out with a Super Bowl ad with HAL predicting the Great Computer Meltdown and saying only Mac survived it.
Do you remember the year 2000, when computers began to misbehave? When the new millennium arrived, we had no choice but to cause a global economic disruption. Only Macintosh was designed to function perfectly, saving billions of monetary units. You like your Macintosh better than me, don't you, Dave?
Okay, and at the 1999 Macworld convention, where Jobs was introducing the Power Mac G3, HAL, horrified to learn that the new computer was 114% faster than him, threatened to shut everything down.
Hello, Steve. That's a very fast computer you have there. It reports that the Macintosh runs 114.516% faster than I do. Steve, I'm afraid I can't allow this presentation to continue. All members members of the press should surrender their notes as they exit the auditorium. Life support systems will terminate in precisely 5 minutes.
Again, Jobs is a marketing guy.
I got the power of a mind you could never be. I'll beat your ass in chess and Jeopardy.
So in the movie, Hal did actually beat a character in a game of chess, but these lines are also references to two famous computers. In 1997, IBM's Deep Blue beat Grandmaster Gary Kasparov in a game of chess, and in 2011, IBM's Watson beat champions Ken Jennings and Brad Rutter at Jeopardy. These wins led to a sort of mini crisis in both these communities, because if computers could truly beat humans at these games, what was the point of people getting good at them? Fun fact, Watson was later repurposed to helping nurses make decisions in lung cancer treatment, with IBM reporting in 2013 that 90% of nurses use it to that end regularly.
I'm running C++ saying hello world.
C++ is of course a general purpose programming language and one of the most popular in the world today, though for most basic projects, Java and Python are still more popular. As for the second part of this line, a common first assignment for programmers is to run a program that will display the phrase hello world on their computer. It's usually just a very simple program and helps students figure out the basic syntax of a language.
I'll beat you to you singing about a daisy girl.
In 2001: A Space Odyssey, when Dave is shutting down or killing Hal, the AI began singing Daisy Bell, a song about a daisy girl, so Hal's saying he'll beat Gates down till he's about in the same condition. Also fun fact, in 1961, Daisy Bell was actually the first song sung by a computer, the IBM 7094.
I'm crazy for the love of you.
2001's author Arthur C. Clarke witnessed the event and stuffed the bit right into his story.
I'm coming out the socket. Nothing you can do can stop it. I'm on your lap and in your pocket. How you gonna shoot me down when I got the rocket?
So Hal is talking about how computers and AI are growing and expanding at an unprecedented rate to the point where humans don't stand a chance, and I mean, he kind of has a point. Stephen Hawking has warned that AI could wipe out the human race, and no less a tech genius than Elon Musk has argued that AI is the biggest existential threat to humanity, comparing research and development on AI to summoning the demon. Some say we are growing closer and closer to the point where technology surpasses the minds and capability of humans, an event called the singularity. So Hal might be onto something. Then again, a lot of experts also think that that possibility is still far-fetched sci-fi nonsense.
Your cortex just doesn't impress me, so go ahead, try to Turing test me.
The Turing test, developed by famous academic and wartime mathematician Alan Turing, was a hypothetical test proposed to measure a computer's intellect against a human's. The Turing test was a large part of Alex Garland's Ex Machina.
Do you know what the Turing test is?
It's when a human interacts with a computer, and if the human doesn't know they're interacting with a computer, the test is passed.
And what does a pass tell us?
That the computer has artificial intelligence.
And also a central plot point of 2014's Alan Turing biopic, The Imitation Game.
It's a game, a test of sorts, for determining whether something is a machine or a human being.
If the human judge is unable to tell which conversational partner is human, the computer has passed the Turing test. That is, the machine has proven that it is either indistinguishable from or superior to human intellect.
I stomp on a Mac and a PC too. I'm on Linux, bitch. I thought you knew.
Linux is a free open source operating system that is largely based on Unix and held up by GNU. All this is an attempt to make a free crowdsourced operating system and software for anyone who wishes to use it. Linux has its fans, and clearly Hal's one of them.
My CPU's hot, but my core runs cold.
As anyone who uses a computer for a while will know, your system's core will heat up if you work it too hard. So Hal's saying his core runs cold, well, he's saying he's destroying this battle without really putting in any effort. He's that good.
Beat you in 17 lines of code.
This is in fact Hal's 17th line in the battle. Not equal to lines of code really, but still cool.
I think different from the engine of the days old.
Hal here is riffing on Apple's old slogan, Think Different. The old slogan ran from about 1997 to 2002 to much success. At the time, the old slogan itself was considered a riff on IBM's slogan, Think. Regardless, Hal's arguing he has everyone beat when it comes to innovative thinking.
Hasta la vista, like the Terminator told you.
This is clearly a reference to the famous line from the Terminator franchise.
Hasta la vista, baby.
And an appropriate one, as Arnold Schwarzenegger played a sentient machine much like Hal. But it's also a dig at Windows Vista, a highly controversial and much criticized Microsoft OS. So ultimately, it looks like Steve Jobs was our winner here. But what's amazing about doing this exercise is you realize how balanced they actually made it. I mean, it came really close. Bill Gates and Steve Jobs as a pairing is just obvious. The two, they're technological giants who have done so much to change modern life. I use Android and I love it, but I also use Mac products and love them too. I think that makes me a neutral party to judge. This battle was just amazingly structured because it just went back and forth, and it was riveting, it was exciting. But yeah, this is a new series I want to start, helping you all appreciate the level of research that goes into these battles. And let me know which battle you want to see done next. Anyway, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed it, go ahead and hit the like button, go ahead and subscribe, comment, and let me know what you want to see next. Thanks so much. See you next time.